Tonight, we're going to be talking about a subject that I've just seen personally a lot of club players struggling with, and that is endgames in which you have a queen or you just have a pawn, and there's a pawn on the 7th rank that's about to promote. So sometimes, depending on the situation, it's a win for the person with the queen. They can prevent white from promoting and then just win the game. And sometimes it's a draw. So we're going to go over the cases and try to understand the difference when it's a win, when it's a draw. So we'll jump over to the board here really quick. And there's a couple cases that are simpler, so we're going to go ahead and have a look at them first. In the case of pawns, the knight pawns, so the B pawn and the G pawn, it's almost always a win for the attacker, the person with the queen. Same is true with the middle pawns. So if your opponent has a pawn on any one of these green squares, chances are it's a win for black. There's some really strange exceptions where that's untrue. But as a general rule, these are just always a win for black. So we'll take a quick look at this, and this should be a win. Now, more difficult are the outside pawns, the rook pawns on the A and H file, and the bishop pawns, so the C and F pawns. And for those, it depends on the position of the black king. So we'll look at where the king needs to be in order to have a winning position. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to immediately assess a scenario like this and whether or not it's a win or a draw. So obviously, if you're white in this position, you're hoping to draw because black at any moment can sack the queen for the pawn and it's a draw. So black is playing for 2 results. He's the one that wants to win. Now, we'll kind of breeze through the simpler ones. So here we have a G pawn. And the basic technique that black needs to use is he needs to check the king around a lot. And whenever the king ends up stepping in front of the pawn, black has 1 turn to advance the king closer to the pawn. So for example, this is a game, Ernesto Inarkiev versus Petr Kiriakov. And so here's how this game finished. Okay, the queen has to get closer. And for example, we'll look at in the game King E7. But for example, if they just willingly play King G8, well, no problem. We just advance our king. And then whenever he moves away, we check until he has to go back in front of the pawn again. King G7, King G6, this is basically the same. And I want to introduce this idea too. In general, in most of these positions that we're going to see tonight, it's a good idea for black to not only just check. I mean, checking is fine. There's a lot of these, there's just going to be several ways you can win. But attacking the queening square usually forces white to make a very specific move. So it's one of the most forcing moves because if he moves anywhere other than H7 in this position, if he moves here for some reason, you just put your queen on G8 and okay, now it's easy. You can just bring your king in and win the pawn. So by attacking the queening square, you're sort of forcing him. He only has 1 move, which makes it a lot easier to calculate. And here, for example, okay, we can pin. And now a common pattern. How do we force the king in front of the G pawn? Queen H5, and the king has to go in front of the pawn. Okay, then we advance our king. And this will be a similar pattern. So you can memorize a pattern, or you can just, sort of understand the idea. The idea is just to put the king in front of the pawn and go from there. So here's how the game progressed. He attacked the pawn, so the king has to go back and defend it. And the queen advanced all the way up. All right, and so here black just needs to force the king in front of the pawn. So he can do so by attacking the pawn from really, really close. The only place you can go is here to protect your pawn. And a simple check. And here's where the game ended. So this was the actual game. And the reason it ended is because white knew black had the technique. So it's been like 30 minutes for us, but like 1 minute for you. So whenever the king goes in front of the pawn, just to repeat, And we got some new faces here, so that's good. The king approaches. And you just apply a similar pattern. So we just need to force the king in front. So normally the best way is to pin the pawn and just check him in front. And you'll notice it's just the same pattern over and over. You check and then you put your queen really close to the pawn. And, okay, but here, there's a really quick way. You can keep doing the same pattern. But there's a quick win here for black. So here I'll test the audience. And this is a little trick that we're kind of going to see a lot of this lecture.
King G5.
King G5, which allows me to queen. I'll check.
No. Okay, sorry. Simple. Oh, then pin the pawn with queen F2.
Yeah, so we can do this again. This is fine. I go here. This is fine, but there's an even faster win.
Faster, okay.
Because yeah, I mean you can check. You can do this again. You know, and you can do that again. But there's a quick win here. King H5. Exactly. A very interesting move. And this happens very often. These are the kind of patterns you need to look for in these types of positions. You can even allow white to promote in many circumstances because hopefully we all see it. There's a big checkmate, queen H6. So that's the kind of thing that is going to happen all night. You're going to have to be setting up mating nets, so you anticipate they promote, but then in the next move or the next couple moves, it's checkmate. So that's when it's knight pawns, it's pretty simple, hopefully. So here, let's see. Where's the... So this is the game Magnus Carlsen versus Alexander Grischuk from the World Blitz Championship in 2009. And so now we're going to look at the central pawns, which, to repeat, because it's been a long time for this class and there's new people, if the pawns are knight pawns or central pawns, let's make them green because they're, yeah, green's a nice color because those are the pawns you want to see as the attacker with the queen. Because those are almost always a win. So this is a winning position for white. And the treatment is the same. The goal is to put the king in front of the e-pawn and then slowly advance your king until you're able to either take the pawn or get a checkmating attack. So we'll go the way Carlsen did it, then we'll go back and see sort of a slightly more refined way. His way was fine. He checked a lot and went here, and so... And we'll see if we'll look at the same pattern. We can get there a little bit faster by instead going to F4. This is just a slightly faster, more accurate way to do this. Now you go here, which again, so we're right by the pawn. That's where you want to be. He's forced to go here. And now what move does white play?
Check the king to get him on.
Okay, which check?
With H3, queen H3.
Queen H3. Okay, I can go here, I guess. You can do better.
All right. Why not queen F3 check?
Yeah, why not queen F3 check? Excellent. Queen F3. So you can move away from the pawn and let me have it. Which, okay, you have to play this if you're trying to still win. But now we get to simply advance the king. Okay, now he goes here. Many ways to win. What's the simple move, I guess? Pin it. Let's see. This also wins. Everything wins. With the idea that if you go here, white can play what?
Oh, you can let him promote again because of the same tactic. Where you
Yeah, how are you going to let him promote again?
Queen D, King D3, and then if you promote,
yeah, King D3, and yeah,
D2. Yeah.
What a funny position, yeah, and checkmate. Good. So yeah, again, it's that technique. The alternative is to go here and here. Okay, this also wins. And so for most of these, there's several ways that you can do it, but okay, for central pawns and knight pawns, it's the same thing. You just want to get the king in front of the pawn. But we'll move on to some slightly more difficult, more challenging exercises. Alright, it worked. Okay, now for another little trick. We're going to start looking at the bishop pawns. So bishop pawns and the outside pawns, these are a bit more difficult. But once again, we'll have a look at a similar little trick. This is Valerij Popov versus Timur Gareev, 2002. So I'll test the class. What's the winning move here for white?
Same technique. I think you have to check the king in front of his passed pawn.
Yeah, so you can. So here, yeah, you can start doing checks and get the king in front of the pawn. There are some tricks that we'll see in the next exercise when it's a bishop pawn. But here you have an immediate win. And this is the sort of, it's not really a tactic, but it's the sort of move, mating, attack that you kind of really want to be familiar with. So that's why I'm going to show just one more example.
I'm looking for similar tactics to the past two examples, but it doesn't seem like the king. It seems like the king is just one square too far away.
Seems like the king's one square too far away. Okay. Okay, but so what happens here in a position like this is where black wants to be, and this is kind of an interesting fact about the position. Which side does the king want to be on? There's actually a difference. Does he want to be on the long side or the short side? And for stalemating tricks, the king wants to be on the short side. The reason is, and we'll see this in our next exercise, sometimes we have stalemating tricks based on the fact the king can go to h1, and if the queen ever takes on f2, it would be stalemate. So that's what we're going to see. So this might win, but again, there's a simpler knockout blow. You don't want to let it promote, but you want to let it promote if you checkmate them.
Yeah,
then you don't care.
I can't get past that fine block. Okay, well then let's start calculating.
Yeah, so see if you can calculate a similar thing.
You know, because I don't think that moving the king is,
okay, you don't think
fruitful.
Okay, you don't think moving the king is fruitful. Okay.
And so I'm looking for a good square for her to be on to deliver, or at least close mating threads that after F1 is played.
I mean, so for mating threats, I mean, the queen can't do it by herself.
Yeah, so you need the king.
You need the king closer. Doesn't matter what square, you can teleport. That doesn't matter. You're going to need the king involved for a checkmate.
Then I'll start with d4 and I'll let F1 happen, and then I'll say that I'll have to check.
Okay, you'll go here, which is... Okay, which is the same. I guess I had looked at this move. It's the same. Okay, I promote. Woohoo. Just give me one more turn. I'll check and trade the queens, and alright, I'm the best.
Which is why you can't allow that. Yeah, and you have to check in ways that you don't get checked in return.
To check them in ways you don't get checked in return.
Right, I mean, I don't know that.
So this is a very important trick, so that's why I'm showing it. And this will be crucial to solving all of the rest of the puzzles going forward, because they're suddenly going to get a little bit harder here. The winning move here, and if you haven't found it at home, you can pause and keep looking, is the surprising move here, if it'll let me.
Queen G3 check.
King E3. And remarkably, black does not have a good move. You know, if you're not moving if you move your king, I'm checkmating you. If you move your queen, I'm checkmating you. There's no good check. Remarkably, black just doesn't have a good check. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. None of these checks work. So you got all these possible places you can check me, but none of them work. And no matter what black does, he's going to get checkmated very soon. So this is an important little trick. So we'll look at it just one more time here. And this is that's the sort of thing that you're looking for. You want to get your king really close, and so the game actually went like this, and then he resigned because he's going to go down, and then the king's going to go to e3 anyway. But okay, if they promote, we're so close, and because we're actually so close and the queen is working with us, there's no checks for black.
So it's a well-known technique.
Yeah, so it is a pretty well-known technique, so this will be the kind of thing that hopefully we're taking note of because it'll affect the rest of the lecture. Okay, now, here's a case where, again, it's a bishop pawn. This is the game Rafael Lubzinski versus Mateusz Bartel. I'm not going to pronounce any names right. But this here is actually a very easy draw for white, assuming he knows just the one little thing he needs to know. White only needs to know one thing to draw. That is, whenever he gets checked, just bounce back and forth in the corner. So here, the king is just too far away. If the king were closer, and we'll look at how close he needs to be in the next exercise, then it might possibly be a win for black. Like if I'm way up here, then black has the ability to win the game. But as it is, here's how the game panned out. So the black queen can get as close as she wants. All right, fantastic. But in this position, the obvious stalemate trick, and this is what makes the bishop pawns a little bit tougher than the other pawns, this would be stalemate, which actually happened. That's how the game finished. But yeah, obviously you don't have time to move your king because white promotes, and that'll be a draw. The king is just way too far away. And so the fact that you have this bishop pawn gives you these stalemating tricks. When the pawn is on the g file and it's a knight pawn, then you don't really have these tricks because the king is tucked in the corner in a way that he won't be able to get himself stalemated. And the central pawns, there's way too much side on both sides, so the stalemate tricks just don't work. But we'll see. When the pawn's here, there's some stalemating tricks because, okay, if it was white's turn here, it's stalemate.
What was it about the pawns again? It's that she can...
Sure, so... Right, so you want to go to the I file. You know, you wish there was one more file, because then you could do the same thing, and then when I take your pawn, it's stalemate. But there's just not enough space, so you're not going to get stalemated. If you're here, I can play a move like queen h6 and force you in front of your pawn, as we saw in the last couple of exercises here. So that's sort of the simple drawing technique that white keeps in mind. What is this? Boop. All right. So we're going to talk about the king and the placement of the defending king. So the king, as we've discussed, wants to be on the short side. That is the side closest to the corner. Some people call it the right side, the correct side, whatever you want to call it. Just the king wants to be on this side for that same stalemating trick. And, and we're going to look at it. It's a little bit different. It's the black king doesn't need to be as close, or I guess the attacking king doesn't have to be as close if the king is on the wrong side or the long side. And I'm going to highlight some magic squares here. So I told you guys before the lecture we talk about some magic squares. And here are the magic squares. This is only when the king is on the short side. And this is just some chess geometry that is very interesting. So the pawn diagonally from the pawning square. So here's the pawn. You go light square to light square. This is a square that if the black king is one square away, because you're on the short side, and the short side is just one square away, you have a win. Conversely, if this king is over here, one square away from e7, it's a win. And so that's, just the pawn directly next to the other pawn.
Be on c7 at least. C7,
Right.
c8.
Right. Yeah, so there's like a little box you have to be in. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like to color those in, even though some of those squares are impossible. So if you're in that box, it's a win for black. So this is a draw. This is a draw. This is a draw. This is a win. This is a win. So wherever you are, if you're in that box, one square away from either the square next to the pawn or the square diagonally from the pawn, and we can kind of understand why g6 is an important square for the king to go to, because in many lines, when you promote, and we can force your king to the h-file, and we need this square for some mating tricks. So imagine if I was here, I could check you on the h-file and then queen h7. So it's for mating attacks, or if I'm on the 7th rank, my queen will be able to swing over to h7 and checkmate you. So that's why this is an important square. And this is the game Jose Soares Masculo versus Artur Yusupov. And there's more than one way that black can win this. And he chose the prettiest because he's a chess artist. So I really like the way that he did it. There's two techniques. The easy way and then the pretty way. So when you really want to show your opponents you know what you're doing, you do it Yusupov style. In this game, he went to g6. We'll have a look at it. Perhaps the easy way, a principled continuation, is queen e7. And white's move is forced. He kind of has to go to g7. If he goes here, we step up. And so again, we can see why this magic square is so important for black. Okay, so instead he goes to g7. This is a little more testing. But white is basically in Zugzwang here. You know, the pawn is pinned. The king is going to have to move away and give us access to the queening square. So I would probably go here. I chose b7 because sometimes I check you, you're still pinned. You move away. If you don't go here, then you unprotect your pawn or go right in front of your pawn. And both those scenarios are bad for you, so he goes here. But now king g6. And yeah, it doesn't matter. You can make a knight if you're a wise guy, but king h6 and then the game ends. And yes, obviously queening is the same checkmate. But I want to show you the way that in this position he chose to win.
Queen g6 check.
Queen
h6. I mean king h8.
Uh-huh.
And then king h6.
King h6. He's going to promote with check.
And then mate on h7.
Okay. Does it sound loud enough? Ben Simon's not here.
No.
Yeah, but people have headphones on at home, so I don't want to hurt their ears too much. Go one more time. Oh, mouse slip. So let's go back. Queen g6, so this was correct. Now this is nice.
Don't walk into check.
Right, and wait a minute, the queen is on the magic square. So that doesn't work for us. We don't want stalemate. Okay, very astute. So in the game, queen f6. Okay. And we go to the magic square. But has black blundered? This looks pretty good for white. Looks pretty good for white.
Just check on e6 and game.
Just check on e6?
No.
And game over?
No. Yeah, sure. Then one more check on h3.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
And so here this would just win. You see, you move the king, there's a checkmate on h7, you can block with your queen, and that obviously leads to a very quick checkmate. Let's just look at this, because maybe it'll come in handy later in the lecture. So back in this position, this is a very interesting maneuver. You can check, so notice where the queen is. It's right behind the pawn. That's what makes this maneuver work. So the king's on the magic square, the queen is directly behind the pawn, so that when it promotes, you can check and check on the h-file. Or if it's on the other side of the board, the a-file, doesn't matter. Okay, very good. So this is, I just made this one up. It's basically the same thing, except for I'll ask the audience again, what are the magic squares that the black king needs to be one square away from in order to have a winning position?
g6 and e7, right?
G6, E7. So it's the same. The diagonal pawn from the pawn and the side with the short corner here, and directly next to it.
That's the part that I'm getting lost on. The pawn diagonally, the square
Yeah,
diagonally behind the pawn.
Yeah, I assume there's some brilliant way I could say, but okay, this is the geometry. So it's diagonal towards the short corner side.
Okay.
Just in front?
Well, yeah.
Right, yeah, so it's in front. Is this in front? Which way is in front?
Well,
From white's perspective? Still which way's in front? I don't know. What does that mean? Memorize this geometry. It's if you play Tetris, maybe it's easier.
It's an L piece.
It's an L. Yeah, right. It's
Adjacent
almost
to
knight-shaped. It's like knight-shaped? Ooh.
No, on the
Little
long
knight
side
shape.
it's the square adjacent to. On the short side it's the square diagonally behind.
Yeah, it's diagonally behind. You think this way is behind?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, because the pawn is
because
moving.
of the white pawn, yes.
It's a white pawn, so it's behind?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why it's going
So white's, behind on the diagonal, or just directly adjacent. Okay.
What?
On the
As long
long
as,
side,
they can figure it out at home. They can figure it out. Just
smart.
just figure it out. So here, obviously, we're within our 1 square radius that we need. And again, that only applies when the king is on the short side here. So this is a win for black, but by no means super easy. And again, there's several ways that you can win this position. So we kind of understood why g6 was a magic square, because that's a good square for our king, because we can mate you when your king is in the corner. But what's so special about e7? Are we going to incorporate e7 into our attack here? So there's several ways to do it. I guess one way is to check. And the good thing is, so here you probably won't mess up with your king this close. But, okay, you can check. And if they go here.
Or checkmate on whoa.
There's a checkmate?
No.
But, okay, so we can go here, give the white king some space, and then checkmate. Okay, similarly, we can also win in this position by pinning. This also will win no matter what he does. If you go here, we can check, and it's the same sort of thing. We can go here. So something like this will be a checkmating attack for black. So, okay, those are the 2 squares. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
Can you go back to the beginning real quick? Sorry. This one's not actually.
Sure. And for this, it's actually, if you want to practice, you can just move the king and queen wherever you want and see for yourself. See if you can't win with, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys can prove me wrong. But, put the king here and your queen wherever you want. Put the king here. Just, you can play around with it as much as you want. You can even go on an endgame database if you want and just move it around and test this out for yourself. So you can either just believe in the magic, or you can just figure it out for yourself and calculate. And all right. What? But here the king is on the wrong side, or if you prefer, the king is on the long side or the wide open side. You can call it whatever you want. Whatever makes sense to you guys. So the king is on the long side, which is wrong. He would much rather be here. And this is also kind of important if you're on the defending side. Say your king was here and you were trying to decide what move to make, assuming you couldn't promote. Which side would your king rather go to? Well, now you want to go to the short side. So, because he's on the wrong side and there's not stalemating tricks over here, because you want to get in the corner for your stalemating tricks, it'll actually take black some extra time to get into the corner for his little trick, which means now the magic squares are once again the square behind, underneath, below the other diagonal.
He's sitting on the other.
Or E2 is the other one.
And so not E2, so this is the difference. Now it's 2 squares. And the white king only needs to be 2 squares away from either one of these squares for it to be a win for white.
2 squares.
So now everything is 2. This pawn is still in the same place. This is the same magic square. But the pawn directly adjacent now is 2 squares away. And the white king only needs to be 2 squares away from either of these magic squares. So this all wins. That's 2 squares. That's 2 squares. Woohoo! And then, since I'm teaching both classes, we have hours and hours. We're just gonna make pretty pictures. I think for the second hour, I'm just gonna paint on chess base and you look at this. Ooh, the squares light up. Ooh. That'll probably be the next 60 minutes of the class.
That'll probably be it.
What? He's not gonna edit that out. Don't edit that out, Ben Simon. Look. Woo. So okay, the white king is 2 squares away, and this would be a draw. Anywhere in the red is a win. So why should this be the case? Okay, well And here also, too, there's another little technique that in general is the right way to do this as white. We do not want the king to run this way. Well, this way. Yeah, we don't want him to go to h2 either. We don't want the king to run this way because then he's going to have stalemating tricks in the corner. So a good way to do it, there's many checks, but if you just pick, I don't know, normal check, these probably both win, but it's going to be more technical than it has to be. If you decide to skewer the king, and okay, there's 2 squares, you can do it. It's just in general, you just skewer the king to the queening square. This just always seems to work out in most examples, so it's just a good technique to try to find. Always skewer the king to the queening square, and it prevents him from going that way. And in order to win this position, we're going to need to centralize our queen. We're going to find out that the queen needs to be on the 2nd or 3rd rank, and the king is going to have to be on the magic square. So let's have a look. We need to centralize. Again, we don't want the king going this way, so another good check. And we put her right in the center. And, okay. So black is trying to run to the other side. But it's time to bring the king in. All right, we're 1 square away. And with our queen centralized here, we're doing pretty good. So now we're on the 3rd rank. That's where we want to be. We want to be on the 2nd or 3rd rank. The reason being, this is where our king's going to be. So on the 2nd rank, whenever you can let them promote, and then you can mate them on h2. And when you're on the 3rd rank, you can do the Yusupov maneuver that we already saw. And we'll pretend like he's the first guy that ever came up with that maneuver. That'll be a win, so we can check that out as well. Okay. Inviting you to take the pawn and stalemate him. But no. So remember how the Yusupov technique worked. Where did our queen need to be? That was like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm like trying to avoid eye contact.
You can look at me. I'm looking at you. Where did the queen need to be? Queen needs to be on h6.
She needs to check on the open flank file, right?
Yeah.
So before the black pawn promoted, I said, this is where you want the queen, and this is where you want the king. And so to repeat, there's other ways to do this that might be easier, but this is the prettiest, so that's important. You really want to show them, not only do I know this in and out, I find the prettiest.
I have such mastery over it.
Yes.
I can choose the most aesthetically.
Exactly. Yep. So the queen wants to be directly behind the pawn. And the king wants to be on the magic square. So here again, we have it. The queen directly behind the pawn. The king on the magic square. So when they promote, there's the same checkmate. It's on a different part of the board, so everybody is confused.
Queen e3, and then on the
H file. And yeah, again, you either move over and get checkmated, or give up your queen and get checkmated. So that's the first example of king on the wrong side, or king on the long side, or whatever else you want to make up. So here again, the king is on the long side. So who can tell me where are the magic squares?
G3 and D2.
G3 and D2. So the square aiming towards the corner, the diagonal towards the corner from the pawn, or 2 squares away because, again, it's 2 squares away when the king is on the wrong side. Okay. So is this a win? Whose turn is it? It's white to move. So what's the evaluation here?
I say win.
You say win. Good. Because you're 2 squares away. Let's see. So you're inside this magic box. So So since he's inside the magic box, it will be a win for white. So just one square away, and it would be a draw. Why does E5 not count?
It's 3.
E5 counts. So we're in the magic box. So this should be a win for white. Okay. And here there's actually only one move for white. Queen A6. Good. And, okay, we're preventing the king from running over to the long side. And again, skewering the king to the queening square basically forces black to play his only move. If you go to some other square, well, we can just plop the queen on the queening square, and then it's quite simple. We just bring our king in and win your pawn. So black's move is basically forced. But in the other example, we were able to bring the queen to the center by checking and then going to the center. Here, that's not going to work. And this can happen a lot in these types of endgames, that your own king can be in the way. So we can't do it exactly the same way as we did before. So we're going to need to find a different way of checking the king and preventing black from going over to the other side. Queen C4. So if you don't check me, I promote. And so this will be a draw. Your king is obviously not close enough to mate me on that turn. Queen E6. Excellent. So it's sort of the only realistic check. But let's be careful. Which way is black going to go? He's obviously, I'm running. What if he goes the other way? Well, he doesn't want to go that way. He wants to go here. Because if I go here, then you weren't here for the first lecture, where when he's on the short side, the magic squares are here, and the king has to be one square away. So in this position, if this king were on G2, it would be a draw. So this needs to be prevented, which is a big hint. So there's actually 3 moves that win here, and everything else blows it. What's that? Queen E4? Okay, now this is a draw. I'm on this side. And now the magic squares are here, and the white king is not one square away from the magic squares.
So then Queen G4.
Yeah, Queen G4. And okay, any one of these squares on the G file wins. This seems to make the most sense because you want to get as close as possible to the king. And again, you're forcing him to go the other way. All right. Still not easy. So you can keep checking, or you can bring the king in. King's not close enough. But here's, I'm not close enough. Since he's on this side, here's the magic squares, and so if I'm 2 squares away from either one of these, then I'm close enough. So I'm close enough. Okay.
It's either bring the king closer or put the queen directly behind the pawn.
If you go here, what are they going to do? They're going to promote. Queen H3 again. What's he going to do?
Same thing. Sorry.
He's going to promote.
You have to play Queen E4.
Queen E4. You want to repeat this?
All the difference is that now it's your turn.
Uh huh.
You get to D2
Now you want to go here?
The king's into, yes.
before.
Okay. So now, since I'm on the short side, the magic squares are here, and your king needs to be 1 square away, and it's not. So this is a draw. But this is right. So don't let me go this way.
So on the G file, you said let's put her on the G file.
Yeah, Queen H1.
Oh, okay.
That prevents me from going that way. All right, I go here.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
What is our purpose again this time?
So we kept the king over on the long side. And, okay, we're looking for a mating
You can
attack.
play King C2 here and get the tricks
Queen
again.
G2.
Right, queen g2 is correct.
Yes,
Keeping the pawn pinned.
Yes, but
And so the other example we saw, queen on the third rank, is a win. So we're gonna understand why being close to this square is important here, because now, obviously, if they promote,
Checkmate.
checkmate.
Yeah.
So that's the importance of the d2 square. It's for the queen when she's on the second rank. So this is what you need. You need to get the queen on the second rank and the king close enough to the magic square, while keeping the king on the long side.
What about the magic square of G3? Did you say that's magic square?
Yes. So we already, I mean, so a lot of people are coming in late, and this whole lecture got delayed a whole bunch because it was a huge emergency at the Hall of Fame. So don't even work there, but I saved the day yet again. Yeah, everybody clap. Yeah, add some applause, Ben Simon. Come on. Does that make sense to everybody? They can be rather tricky, all of these exercises. So just to repeat one more time, when he's on the long side, and I know people just keep coming in, so I'm just repeating. You guys have heard it 1,000 times, so hopefully some of you at home understand. Since he's on the long side, your king needs to be 2 squares away from either of the magic squares, which in this case, it's the same as we've seen before, plus the square 2 squares adjacent. So that, and so by keeping the king away and forcing him to stay on the long side, we were able to get our queen to the second rank and get our king just close enough so that we could use the d2 square. We will now take a look at the game Shakhriyar, Mamedyarov, Etienne, Bacrot from 2008. I'm not going to pronounce a single name right. That's fine. We get this position. So lastly, we're going to look at the rook pawns. These are probably the trickiest of all. These are the worst. So the magic square for the rook pawn is a little bit different. Does anybody just know off the top of their head if this is a win or a draw?
It's a win.
It's a win?
I know it's a draw.
No, wait, no, it's a draw. Is it both?
Looks like a possible win.
A possible win. So right, so again, these are really hard to assess, but if you know the magic squares, which we just make a diagonal, it's a dark squared pawn. The magic squares are the 2 diagonals, so you can make these little
So
boxes in your head.
you have to be able to make them on F2 or if
Yeah, so the white king needs to be within 2 squares of F2 or G3 in this case.
it's not.
And it's not. So this is a draw. So again, we can draw another box because we got all the time in the world. Ben Simon will cut out however much he wants. But we got plenty of time. Woohoo!
E5, mark E5, so
Yeah,
she
you
doesn't
forgot
have a fit.
E5.
Yeah.
E5. Yeah, that's a tough one to see. So don't forget about E5 at home. That's the important one. But okay, you can see it's a nice little box. And the king is not in there. So in this game, they just, all right, stalemate. Didn't even try because presumably 2700s know this. Presumably. I don't know. So moving on.
What if the king was at D2? How would he win?
How would he be winning? Well, I'm glad you asked. What if the king were on D2? Great question. How is he winning? So now, again, we draw the dark squared little things, however you want to memorize it. That's how I remember it. You could also be like, oh, it's 2 adjacent and 1 behind, or however you want to do it. It's just the 2 dark squares here. If you were here, it would be the 2 light squares. It's a little triangle, however you want to memorize it. And here, the king is within 2 squares of the magic square. So this is a win for white. But how is the question? It's a good question. Let's take a look. So, again, it's the same principle that we've kind of looked at before of skewering the king to the queening square. still a good idea. So, all right, queen b7.
What's the difference between queen b7 and queen a?
My next check, I think. Do you want to be really, really far away? I don't know. I'm trying to get my queen closer to your king. It probably wins. It must win. But I don't know. I'm trying to get my queen closer to your king. Okay, so you go here. You're about to promote. Can't let you promote. So check. And it's a similar thing. We skewered the queen, and then we, again, a check.
E4.
And then, right, so you get to centralize the queen. So that's the big thing. The queen, in all of these lines, needs to be centralized in order for your attack to work. And the question is, do we need to apply any more checks, or do we bring the king a little bit closer?
I think you need.
Have to be closer.
Needs to be closer?
Well,
I guess.
there's a reason why it's F2 and G3. It's probably gonna make from there.
Mhm.
But if your queen's not like protecting those squares either, so you can't make it yet.
Second.
Okay, so
I guess
queen e1. Okay.
But we have to get in a position where the queen can take advantage of those squares.
Okay, and they promote. So yeah, we have good control over this square. And now, so the point of the first one too will be kind of to understand where we need our pieces to be. Some people are starting to figure it out.
You need like
So it's like the same thing as before, except now you're on the H file.
Same thing as before, but now you're on the H file.
So you
Excellent.
play,
Though finding the most accurate move here, very difficult. Unless you understand where your queen needs to be. And for this, we'll actually keep her on the 4th rank. And we'll see why. Now if here, then queen g4 will be the same sort of position that we're trying to achieve. We need to check and get the king here. If here, there's a mate in 1. And now, in this position, we have what move? King f2. And again, no good queen moves. You're absolutely helpless here as black. So, just the same as, okay, sometimes the queen can be on the 2nd rank. You also can be on, the 2nd file from the edge, which is the G file. So one more time. One more time, just to repeat. We skewered. We got the queen to the center. And then we can bring the king in. And we intentionally leave her on the 4th rank. This wins, but you have to repeat a little bit and then get to the same position. So we checked, and we got the queen to the 2nd file from the edge, and we brought the king in. So the king lands on the magic square, and black is helpless. So let's check out one more. Okay, is this a win or a draw?
it's a win
It's a win.
because you're just
2 squares away from the magic square.
Wait,
Um,
before they were green.
No, they were green. Look what else. How do I? Ooh, now it's yellow. Oh! This is a win because, okay, we're 2 squares away. But now, we're coming from the other side. We're on the H file. And
Mate on the 2nd rank.
mate on the 2nd rank. Very interesting. Would anybody like to make a first move here? Yeah.
Queen b7.
All right, queen b7. You skewered the king to the queening square. Okay, excellent.
Queen b1.
Queen b1. Excellent. So it's the same exact thing. All right. The queen is centralized. Now what are you going to do?
4th rank. So you bring the king in, right?
Bring the king in. Yeah, exactly. All right. I got a queen. Yes.
Keep her on the 4th rank. So d4 check, d4 check.
No, I think it's queen e1.
Yeah, so where are we trying to mate the black king?
Because
Yeah,
so the reason it's G3 and F2, it's kind of like a knight's away from the
Knight
H1,
away,
so they
wow.
check you. And so if it's on G3, you want to checkmate down. If it's on F2, you want to go down.
Yeah, if it's on g3, you want to checkmate down. If it's on here, you want to checkmate that way. All right, that's pretty well said.
Right.
That makes enough sense. So,
Check.
Okay, so what do you want to play here?
Eight.
Queen D1, King D2, Queen D2.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Also, again, we could have gotten mate in one, but let's not.
King H2, Queen F2 draw.
And then draw. So yeah, it's obviously you would repeat ticket the draw. You wouldn't just straight queens. You'd like repeat a lot.
Okay, so we were debating.
What'd you say?
Or
Queen E2 check.
Queen E2 check. Ah,
closer.
very good.
Now.
King G3.
Yeah, excellent. King G3. Yes. And again, black is just totally helpless. It doesn't matter what you do. Maybe this is the best move. Is there a better move? Can I last longer? Yeah, just I don't know how to.
Well, you still make
Let
it.
me go out there and take the.
But yeah, so again, this is totally the way to do it. We'll look at this one more time because these are quite complicated. We did a little skewering and got the queen to the center, which again is very important. The next step is to bring the king one step closer. Then we have to find the way. This time we can see a way to do it along the second rank here. So we checked our queen into position. Now she's on the second rank, and the king comes down. And no good move for black. So here the game is over. Thank you guys for watching at home. Hopefully that helped a little bit. And if you like this, go ahead, hit like, share, subscribe, and